Hey everyone, it's Jared with Learn Chinese Now. So let's recap our last episode. It starts with a scholar named Hong Xiuquan who gets sick and has a fever dream where a mystical father and older brother give him a sword to fight demons. He gets handed a copy of the Bible and realizes that the father in his dream is God and the brother is Jesus. He's Jesus's brother. He starts a kind of cult compound in a place called Thistle Mountain and grows an army. The Manchus force him off the mountain but can't defeat his army. He keeps moving up the Xiang and Yangtze Rivers, picking up money, men, and boats until he ends up at Nanjing. He defeats the army there and takes over the city. So they're in the city and they start organizing. Every group of 4 families is under the rule of a corporal, and every 25 families are under the rule of a sergeant. But all men and women are separated into different dorms, and even if husbands and wives try to meet, they may get beaten for it. All the money goes into the public treasury to be distributed evenly. Daily Bible study is mandatory. All Buddhist and Taoist temples are destroyed, and the monks within are killed. Opium is banned. Now, there's one rule that's weirder than the rest. People in the Taiping compound are prohibited from saying the word Beijing. Remember, Beijing is where the Qing Dynasty Emperor lives, and since the Taiping see all the Qing as devils, they are requiring everyone to call the city Yaoxue, or Demon's Den. Hong Xiuquan pledged to wipe all demons from the face of the earth. That was his whole claim to fame. Now that he has his base of operations, he decides to go ahead and carry it out. He sends his army north to Beijing. Now, some historians think that if the Taiping had taken their whole army and marched to Beijing, there's a good chance they could have toppled the Qing dynasty right then and there. There would have then been a Christian dynasty. But they decide instead to split their forces in 2, one to the north, one to the west. Maybe it's because they're overconfident in their ability to take Beijing, but maybe it's also because they're worried about the Qing forces that surrounded them all throughout southern China. They need some protection around their new home. Now, the Western campaign is pretty successful. They retake Wuchang and set it up as their base further down the Yangtze River to keep the Qing from attacking them from the south. But the campaign to overthrow the Qing Emperor is a disaster. The Qing studied the Taiping's tactics. They saw that the Taiping gained strength as they traveled by picking up boats, arms, and new followers in each of the cities they hit. So the Qing get rid of all the boats in the rivers and burn all the food and weapon stocks of any cities the Taiping are about to take over. Even being at a disadvantage, the Taiping get all the way to Tianjin, which is right next to Beijing, but they can't get any further. The Qing surround them. The Taiping put up massive fortifications around their camp, and there's a stalemate. Finally, the Qing divert part of the Grand Canal straight into the Taiping camp and flood them right out of it. Every Taiping who gets out of the flood zone is executed. The Taiping's entire northern army is wiped out. Okay, let's go back to Nanjing for a second. So you remember in the first episode how Hong Xiuquan has 2 top generals, both of whom go into trances, right? Yang Xiuqing is the voice of God, and Xiao Chaogui is the voice of Jesus. Well, the voice of Jesus is now dead. Xiao died on the road to Nanjing. Now that his rival is gone, Yang starts telling a very different story when he goes into his trances. His voice of God starts criticizing Hong, the way he rules, the way his kids act, his private life. He orders the other powerful Taiping officials in Nanjing to go out on military campaigns. Now, Yang is the only general in town, but Hong is still considered a special leader in the Taiping because he was said to have seen God and Jesus many years ago. So Hong has a special title, Lord of 10,000 years. One day, God declares that Yang should also have the title Lord of 10,000 years. Hong has to publicly obey this voice of God, but he knows what's going on. Yang's planning a palace coup. The problem is that Yang has spies all over the city, so Hong doesn't know who to trust to help him organize a counterattack. Finally, he manages to get a letter sent out to two of his top generals, Qin and Wei. They come back to Nanjing with their armies, storm into Yang's palace, kill him and every member of his family, and put his head on a stake. But the job isn't finished. Yang has some 6,000 supporters and spies throughout the city. If they aren't cleared out, they're going to get revenge on Hong. So the two generals devise a trap. Hong announces that he is disgusted with the killing of Yang's family, and he sentences the two generals to the punishment of a public beating in an indoor venue. As the beatings start, Yang's supporters can't help themselves but to crowd around and watch the beatings of their enemies. Once enough people have crowded into the venue, the doors are closed and locked, and the beatings suddenly stop. Taiping soldiers come in and slaughter every last one of Yang's supporters. But that doesn't satisfy the two generals. They start a campaign to root out every supporter or family member and kill them all. This goes too far. The Taiping's most popular general, a man named Shi Dakai, goes back to Nanjing. He tells Qin and Wei that they have gone too far and that they are helping the Qing by killing so many people. The two generals tell him that he had better mind his own business or he is going to end up like Yang. Shi escapes from the city before they decide to kill him, but his family isn't so lucky. The two generals kill his wife and children. Shi goes back, gets his whole army, and starts heading back to Nanjing. He tells Hong that nothing will satisfy him but the heads of Qin and Wei. The two generals see this danger and try to imprison Hong, but Hong has his own elite guards, and they capture and kill Qin and Wei. The threat is over. But Shi is sick of working for Taiping. He's their most successful general by far. But not only did he end up with his family dead, Hong has promoted his own brothers as generals of equal rank to him, even though they barely know anything. He leaves the city, never to return again. So the Taiping's northern army is gone, and most of its generals are dead. You'd think at this point that Hong would take the reins like he used to in the early days and try to get this thing back in order. But no. You see, when the Taiping took over Nanjing, they built a massive palace for Hong, and he never leaves it. He has 2,000 women servants working to fulfill his every need. So what does he work on all day in these times of crisis? Rewriting the Bible. Yep, you heard that correctly. You see, when Hong met with some Western missionaries visiting Nanjing, they told him that there are some errors in the Bible that need correcting. Well, Hong decides that he is going to go through the entire Bible, line by line, and correct anything that he thinks was put there by the devil to deceive believers of Jesus. As you can imagine, this is a pretty big project. So the idea of Hong going out and leading the troops again is a fantasy. So you'd think at this point that the Qing could just waltz into Nanjing, but they're facing serious problems of their own. A huge uprising called the Nian Rebellion breaks out in northern China. The rebels cut off the Grand Canal and make it hard for Beijing to communicate with its troops down south. Britain starts openly fighting the Qing again, and the Qing are running out of money fast. Family members in the imperial court are selling their silks and melting down statues for gold to scrape by. The Qing are hardly in a position to take advantage of chaos in Nanjing, so the Taiping come up with one last idea to save themselves. They send an army to take Shanghai. Their idea is, Western countries hate the Qing because they restrict their trade so much, so if they liberate Shanghai, they'll love us and they'll help us against the Qing. They go into Shanghai and manage to drive out the Qing. And then disaster strikes. The Western countries take exactly the wrong message and think that they're the ones under attack. They fire on the Taiping, shut off all trade with them, and eventually the British join forces with the Qing to attack the Taiping. With their help, the Qing arrive at the walls of Nanjing. Hong is really sick by this point, and he dies while the Qing are outside his walls. He's been eating weeds because of a food shortage, but some people think he may have been poisoned, or even poisoned himself. But after he dies, that wraps it up for the Taiping. The Qing dig massive tunnels under their walls and blow the walls up with explosives. The exact same thing the Taiping had done to them just years earlier. They rush in and take the city. And that's the end of the bloodiest civil war in history. How bloody was it? It's estimated that more than 20 million people died, more than the death toll of World War I. The Taiping saw the Qing as demons, so they took no prisoners when they won. And the Qing did the same to them. The wars threw China's agriculture into chaos, and millions died from famine and disease. And the Qing were so weakened by the war that they lasted less than 50 years before collapsing. Well, I hope you liked this episode, and I hope you check out our other videos on Chinese poetry, language, and history. Until next time, 再见!